everyone. Welcome to Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is on the survivors of conversion therapy, and we have an absolutely amazing panel of perspectives. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, register with StreamYard so we can see your name and when you have a comment or a question. Please keep all comments and questions related to the show topic, and remember, this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. You all rock and enable the show to go on. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it. I have started a Patreon under Fireside Creators, Cafe Press under Sherry Palace, or you can use the support tab on the website. And if you do, you can become a VIP to get to chat on camera with the panel after the show for only $3 a month. Thank you in advance for supporting my work, but more importantly, thanks for being here and welcoming us into your home. Okay, enough housekeeping. Tonight's show is with the survivors of conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is any attempt to change a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. A few weeks ago, I had the grandfathers of conversion therapy who regretfully helped found the movement and have since left and now are working to stop the inhumane practice. Now we have a different generation, a generation steeped in its practices, and they are making their work to stop it. Now let's meet the panel so we can learn more. We have, let's see, what am I doing? Matt Ashcroft is a conversion therapy survivor and activist. He successfully got Canada's C4 bill passed, banning conversion therapy, and will be featured in an upcoming movie on conversion therapy. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad you are here.
Yay! How's it going?
It's going great. Next we have, where's Syre? There we go. Syre Klenke is a transgender activist and conversion therapy survivor. Syre's mission is to expose the trauma inflicted by conversion therapy, and he is fighting to end it worldwide. Welcome, Syre. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you both so much. Let me remove this. For being here, and I can't wait to chat. So let's first start with how you got into conversion therapy. Who put you in there? What were the triggers? How did all of this start in your life? Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay, so thank you. So hi, my name is Matt. I go by he, him pronouns. I am based in Toronto, Canada. Started when I was younger. I grew up in a Jamaican household. My father wasn't really the most accepting person to me. I felt like something was wrong with me, and it was instilled into my brain ever since I was young that something was wrong with me. I was afraid of my dad, and so with the hateful and the homophobic rhetoric that he was spewing out to me, I decided that I was going to hide in the closet. And conversion therapy was presented to me pretty much at the lowest of my life. I found it accidentally on Twitter, and then I moved to Facebook, and I met approximately 300 men that were trying to cure their unwanted same-sex attractions, and then that's how conversion therapy was presented to me in the beginning.
You know, I have found over the course of doing this show that everybody, literally everybody on the planet is trying to accept themselves and trying to figure out who they are and trying to really come into their own. The difference is whether or not society is there punishing you for becoming who you are or condemning who you are. So each of us have this struggle to become who we are and to be authentic. Imagine having, and I'm saying this to my audience, imagine having the societal pressures on top of you saying that you are a sin or you should have shame, to those types of things. I want you to understand what the marginalized have to go through just to be able to feel okay in their own skin.
I want to add to that. Like, being like, I didn't, so growing up in the 90s and like 90s hip hop, I didn't know that being black and gay was a thing, which was kind of crazy.
Mm.
But there is a intersectional difference that needs to be talked about, and so that's the reason why that I'm thankful that you have Syre and I, because we're pretty much one of the most intersectional voices in this movement. So
There
thank
you
you
go.
for having
Sire, talk to me. How did you get into this mess?
Yeah, so I ended up coming out when I was younger to my parents kind of accidentally around the age of 14. And they put me in conversion therapy starting pretty soon after that. And I was going to a one on one therapist, and then I went to a bunch of groups as well, including Exodus International and Living Hope. And all of that was kind of forced upon me. I didn't have a chance to really have a say in any of it. And so it was definitely a situation that I didn't see a way out of until I turned 18. And as soon as I was old enough, I did have, a say in it, and I stopped going. But it definitely affected me in a lot of ways, especially with my parents being the ones pressuring me into that kind of situation.
Are they still pressuring you?
No, not necessarily. I don't have them in my life anymore, which is unfortunate. But they kind of never really quite came around. And there were some other family members too that still do pressure. And so it's not really worth it.
I'm so sorry. So tell us about the bill, Matt, that you got passed. What? Because you're making some big moves in Canada to stop this. By the way, everybody, I am wearing my Say Gay shirt, so we
Yes,
say gay.
yes.
When I wear this on the street, people yell at me, "Gay!" And it's like
Hey,
the best thing ever.
love it. So,
So, what are you
so
doing to stop this?
So Bill C4 is one of the most comprehensive legislations in the world. I actually got this from a activist over in Australia. His name is Nathan Despot, runs Brave Network Melbourne, and one of the things that we focused on with this legislation is no glass ceilings. So
Mm,
we made sure that we tried to get the legalized language to everybody.
okay.
So it's over 18, because we with the data from the community-based research center, it was 30% of people that undergone conversion therapy was under 18, and so we're like, well, what about the rest of the 70%? So we did over 18. We did consent provisions, and we did paid and unpaid services. So advertising and promotion is also listed in the bill. We just want to be sure that everybody's safe and everybody's protected under the law.
Sire, what are you doing to help stop this and to educate people?
So I've been doing a lot of educational information online, but I've also been working locally here in Colorado with One Colorado and the Trans Center of the Rockies. I ended up being the victim of a hate crime earlier this year, so I had to take some time off to recover. But I'm starting to get kind of back into it a little bit more.
Sorry,
Today was actually my last day of physical therapy, so I'm really excited about that.
Mm. Well, congratulations on your recovery, Matt. You took a drink of your beer right as he was saying this, and I smiled.
Here's, here's our,
I apologize for that.
no, it's okay.
So what did you guys experience? Educate the audience as far as what you guys had to go through. I mean, I know when we spoke with the grandfathers, they were talking about the groups that they went into, and all of the pressure from that. What did you guys experience in this conversion therapy?
I'm not going to be able to say my full story, because my full story is going to be in Conversion Movie, which is going to be out soon. But I will
Yeah, you are.
definitely share some highlights that I've shared in previous media interviews. Um, First of all, I think it's really important that we name the names of who did what. So I'm going to say my conversion therapy camp. It was called. It used to be called People Can Change. Now it's called Brothers Road. They still operate. They're operating in Arizona, Texas, and Indiana this year and next year. Completely dangerous people. One of the things that I saw, there's a massive trigger warning because it has to do with sexual assault. I just want to let everybody know. So I was in a room. The exercise was called carpet time. We were told that us being queer was either an overprotective mother and an absent father. So I thought, hey, because my dad was a jackass, like literally my entire life, I thought that would probably make sense. The reason why that I am the way that I am, and I remember there was this guy telling about his story about him being sexually assaulted by his older cousin, and so he's telling his story and he's sharing like authentically as possible. And they said, "Stop. What did you say during this?" "Oh, you're hurting me. Stop it. It hurts. Stop it. I don't want this to happen anymore." So he's like rehearsing what he was saying during when he was sexually assaulted. They stopped him. They whispered to a couple of leaders. One was on his hands and knees, and the other one was pretending to be acting out the sexual assault while saying the words that he was saying at the time. So I remember I saw this guy screaming and crying at the top of his lungs, "Stop, stop, 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 stop." They eventually did stop, but the damage is already done.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's just one story. I got many.
I too am a victim of sexual assault as a child, and my hair is standing up on end. I couldn't even imagine going into a therapy session and having them reenact. Oh my God.
Yeah, so like that's gonna stay. Like his screams is probably gonna stay with me for the rest of my life. This person has a name. This person is somebody that I'll never forget till the day I die.
I may not ever forget this conversation. Thanks for sharing, but holy shit.
I'm really sorry. If you need anything, let me know.
No, I am sorry for you and the torture that you as well as others have incurred. Syre, I'm afraid to ask. Do you have similar stories?
I do not have similar stories to Matt as far as like physical reenactment. Mine was more of like a psychological, shame-based, emotional torture type situation. I had like a one-on-one therapist named Rick Surley who still practices conversion therapy in San Antonio, Texas, advertises it on his website and everything. He did a lot of like kind of sort of, you know, gaslighting and convincing you that the way you feel isn't true, like you've been convinced by other gay people that you feel this way and you don't actually feel this way. And so it was just like a lot of, for me, like I was annoyed because I never really went along with it 100%. I was just kind of like forced into these situations where I had to like endure the length of time I was there. So for my like one-on-one therapy sessions, a lot of them didn't make sense. He didn't know what he was doing even as a therapist, but it still really messed me up as far as like the amount of shame that was put on me, me being told that I'm never going to be loved, me being told that like my parents are going to abandon me if I can't figure out how to get rid of these feelings, how it's a choice, and that I must have chose it at some point. So that was with my one-on-one therapist. And he did damage, but I feel like the biggest damage was done by Living Hope, which was Ricky Cholette and Julie Rogers and Deanne Davis. And Julie Rogers was featured in the Pray Away movie. She was the one who gets married. So she was my group leader in both Living Hope's youth ministries and Exodus International's youth ministries. And we had one-on-one conversations multiple times where I insisted I was not sexually assaulted as a child, which is true, but I was sexually assaulted in my teens. And with Living Hope, they very much followed the Exodus doctrine of like, there's certain boxes you fit in, and that's why you're gay, or that's why you're trans. And at the time, I was out as a lesbian. And they were trying to put me in this box of, well, you must have, if you don't fit all these other situations, you must have been sexually assaulted as a child. And now you have to remember that. You have to remember it. You have to dig it up. And if you can't remember it, you're going to continue to be gay for the rest of your life. So even if you don't have youth sexual trauma, they create it for you in a sense, in that like you end up fantasizing something, but it's upon request because they want you to fit in these boxes. But it's part of them breaking you down. It's part of them shaming you. It's part of them gaslighting you. And even once, and like, and granted, and this is the thing with conversion therapy, is no two people have had the same experience, even if they went to some of the same events. One of the groups I was in at Exodus International, we did talk about, sexual trauma and family trauma and stuff like that. It wasn't acted out physically like Matt said, but I do vividly remember several effeminate individuals. And they also broke you down by like gender. So I was with like the youth girls, and there was a girl who had been sexually assaulted as a child, and she was explaining her assault, and she was getting like questions from the youth leaders, which were also two people identifying as women, one of them being Julie Rogers. I'm like, well, did you entice it? Like, it was very much also like making the victim seem as though they had like in some way, shape, or form not deserved it, but like asked for it, which I feel like is definitely compounding the trauma that's already happening from being in conversion therapy. And this was at Exodus International, so everyone involved has been removed from their like living, like there's like hometown. So we were in Wheaton, Illinois that year, on a college campus, Wheaton College. And so you're not with people, and if you do know people, they're people from your conversion therapy group. And I had known a couple people because I was going to occasional youth groups at Living Hope because I lived in a different town in Texas. And so I was going as I could with my sports schedule because I played competitive soccer. So it was just very much like traumatizing because there was nowhere to go as far as like safety, like real safety. And they take your phones away. They take away, like, you're not allowed to have like identification. You can have like your wallet as far as like paying for things, but no one's supposed to know your last name. So you have to only go by your first name. So it's also dehumanizing in the sense that like even after this occurs, if you don't know one of these people personally outside of conversion therapy, and thankfully for me, I did ironically know one person at Exodus who just happened to be there from my hometown, you could also very much be convinced that like none of it happened or that you were crazy because there's so much gaslighting going on. And like even in Pray Away, there's a lot of people trying to do some PR cleanup of what actually occurred. And I wish they would have interviewed more victims rather than the people putting on Exodus International, because I can specifically, based off my experiences alone, tell you that Julie Rogers played a much larger part than she let on in that particular documentary. And so I know from other people I've spoken to and met, it seems to be kind of a pattern amongst those that were involved for the most part. I think Yvette Cantu was the only one that truly put in, trying to make a difference. And I think she supplied all the video content as far as the video footage, which is really hard to get a hold of these days. But it's, I think, even though I don't agree with that documentary based on the fact that it's not accurately depicting the severity of what happened, I do think the footage that they show and the footage that's still like on YouTube and stuff depicts it a little bit more as to what I experienced personally. Love One Out, which was sponsored by Exodus and was like a funnel event to get people to go to the bigger event. It was a little bit of a pyramid scheme too, in the sense that they try to like get you to continue going along the path. My parents first took me to that, and that's where we met Ricky Chalette. But there were a lot of, just networking within that community that it's still there and it's still happening. And it's terrifying because it's starting to go underground and we need to stop it before it gets worse.
Hey,
So,
Bells,
so
how
like,
are you? Let me just say real quick when Matt, I know you're chomping at the bit because I could see you. But let me just state this, that if trauma caused someone to become a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I would be queen lesbian. Let's just put that out there right now. I am a cis woman who is straight and have years of trauma. Trauma does not cause someone to become homosexual, trans, queer, any of those things. That is how they were born. So let's just end. I just want to throw this out there right now. um, Trauma is caused by telling people that they're not supposed to be who they are. But trauma is not what is the source behind this. I will not allow, I just had to say that. Sorry.
thank you.
I
Matt,
agree completely, but and I think Matt can agree that is kind of the general gist of conversion therapy's
yeah,
excuse
I mean,
for
they said
what they
that with
do.
when I had Bill and Michael on, they kept saying that that was this, and it was like, no, I can guarantee you that that's not the case. I am proof right here. Matt, what were you going to say?
It's I don't even remember.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, but I 100% agree with Syre's framing of the answer. Like, they gaslight, they bully. Like, I even had this one-on-one therapist. His name is Christopher Doyle. I haven't mentioned this in any other media, so I'll give it to you. So, Christopher Doyle, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, we had to write out our sexual fantasies and who they were with, and we had to tell them in full detail on to him. And if we didn't do it in full detail, we would get in trouble, and we would get in trouble every week. Oh, fun fact: Christopher Doyle was on Dr. Oz promoting conversion therapy. So, fun fact.
Well, and like to an extent, the groups that I did with Ricky Chalette and Julie Rogers with Living Hope, which is still an organization that exists in Arlington, Texas. They have youth groups, they have adult groups, and then they also have a live-in facility that's still functioning. And the live-in facility, it's wild. You literally have to like give up your whole life to live there. No one can be able to contact you. Your social media is gone. No one there living there can even know your last name. So your identity is literally just gone. Your job, no one can know where you live. Like it's wild. But my parents tried to convince me to go there instead of taking a college scholarship for soccer. And I said, absolutely not. But that's a real life thing. That's actually something that Julie Rogers was a part of running along with Ricky Chalette and Deanne Davis. I don't know if Deanne Davis is still a part of that organization anymore. She still is listed on their website though. But that was like just one little portion too. I wanted to touch base on like Matt talking about also too, like the shaming part. A lot of it, like they just find different ways to do it. Like one incident I went was with Living Hope. Not well, it was with Living Hope organized the Love One Out with Exodus. It was like a group event that they did with, ironically, an Exodus group in Louisiana, which included Terry Brown, who I think is still doing conversion therapy. But Anne Heche's mom was one of the speakers, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head. And Anne Heche has talked about her mom, and I guess her sister's also involved in her mom's organization. But when Anne Heche was engaged with Ellen DeGeneres, her mom like really lost it as far as um, her homophobic tendencies. And about since that time has been a part of the anti-LGBTQ plus circuit, a lot of which is funded by not Planned Parenthood, sorry, but they also go against Planned Parenthood is focus on the family here in Colorado Springs. But that whole event was kind of organized by those groups. But Anne Heche's mom was presenting, and she was yelling and screaming at members in the audience, including myself, that appeared to be gay, like at the beginning of her speech. And I had never gone to a group event until that event. And so I was kind of being a rebel. I was about like 16, 17, maybe tops. And so my parents were like forcing me to go to this event with them. So I was kind of like, I'm not going to participate in the youth part. I'm going to sit here and annoy you with my presence. And there's Anne Heche's mom yelling and screaming at me because my parents were attentive in the front row. And I was just like, no, I'm done. So just that yelling experience and me having to like get up and leave out of the room because I was so anxious is, I think about that on a regular basis, you know, and I have a lot of empathy for Anne Heche. That's not fair for her to have to experience, and as a bisexual woman especially, you know, to think that your family feels that way about you and is actively participatory in that community. But you know, it affects a lot of people. And I've probably, between those events, between Exodus, I think I went to 2 Love One Out events, and then Exodus is my like 3 big group events. I probably saw about like 30 to 40 different presentations from different people. And I mean, I'd say a good like dozen of them I think about on a regular basis. Julie Rogers included, Cy Rogers, they're not related, but Cy Rogers was a former transgender individual who was in the conversion therapy circuit trying to convince people who, like me, are transgender to consider living life back not as our true authentic selves. And I hadn't realized I was trans at the time, or at least hadn't admitted it to myself. And so that particular speech at Exodus really affected me. And so, you know, it just, these people don't think about what the words they're saying do. And I can guarantee you that Matt can back me up that there's people that spoke at his groups, whether it was in like a speech setting or whether it was in like a group setting for therapy, that you just can't get those thoughts out of your head.
Oh, I can imagine. It sounds like a cult drug rehab.
Oh yeah, very culty, very culty.
Well, and they wouldn't let you have your ID because that means you could escape. Without
Mm-hmm.
ID, you can't escape. So it's more than just your identity. It's that is the ultimate of control. And
On
like,
your
if you can
phone
just get
too.
this out of your system, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can assure you, I'm still not a quiet, submissive woman. No matter how much
Right.
I try to get
Yes.
to do so, I am still not that person. Syre, I got to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about the quarter thing that Julie got you to do?
If you'd like
Okay to say
to,
no. It's totally okay to say no.
I'm fine with talking about it. Yeah. Because I think honestly, there is a toxic environment within that environment where people are subconsciously, well, no, I wouldn't even say subconsciously because it's being spoken outright. I would say it's more people are encouraging each other without straightforward encouraging each other to be self-sabotaging in different ways. And I think that instead of helping me in that particular situation, I was given bad advice. So like I'm okay with talking about that. There was a lot of toxic behavior that was perpetuating through a lot of those groups, and a lot of it was because we weren't getting the actual support we needed, and instead we were being traumatized in those moments when we should have been getting support. And like one of the things kind of similar but different than what Matt and I spoke about earlier is that they would have us go into details about like how we were like coping with our same-sex attraction in between whenever the previous group we went to was, because a lot of people weren't able to go every single week, especially during like the summertime, which is when I was more active because I was in San Antonio and they're in Arlington. And so, and then also they have an online forum too. And there's a lot of this rhetoric that's also on the online forum still actively today. I've had someone send me screenshots within the last 6 months. Yeah, so one of the things that Julie spoke about was she talked about how we talked about our positive and negative coping skills, but it wasn't in a situation where like they really talked about like, oh, these negative coping skills are bad. Here are some coping skills you can do instead that were like legitimate coping skills. So one of the ones Julie Rogers mentioned, that was when she was like anxious or when she was feeling like she was having like especially thoughts about, same-sex attraction, whether it be like masturbation or thoughts about like watching porn. She would take a quarter and she would light it with a lighter and she would burn herself in areas where people wouldn't see. And so some of those areas that were mentioned were like your feet. And like I was already kind of playing soccer, and so like you get cut up, you bruise, you get scratched up. It's not that hard to hide things like that.
Yeah.
And that is something that for a while I did do. But again, like those are like things that are kind of sort of encouraged in the sense that like no one ever said, hey, instead of doing that, maybe you should go grab an ice cube and just hold it in your hand if you're looking for like a tense experience, or pinch yourself instead of like inflicting yourself in a way that's going to be permanent damage. And again, like they have an online forum where they don't delete anything. I had an account on that back in 2010 or 2009 when I was in high school. I think it was 2008 and 2009 when I was in their group therapy, and I've seen screenshots that my comments are still up there. So they brag about having thousands of people on their platform, but the truth is they've kicked a lot of us off for like rebelling. Like I no longer have access. I'm kicked out. I can't go get on and lick myself. But that kind of talk is on those spaces where people can go and access that at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, when they're really having like deep seated thoughts where they're like, is how I'm feeling okay? And then the only resource they have are these people that are making them worse as far as their personal feeling about themselves, but also to traumatizing them more. And if they're already on the youth forum, their parents are not supportive. And so that's the part that like really scares me, is that a lot of the people that are being exposed to these things are youth who don't necessarily have safety nets or don't feel comfortable asking for the people around them to be safety nets. And I wish I would have known.
Trauma are leading the traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine going to a therapist and them saying, well, this is what I used to do, but don't do that. I mean,
Well, and that's the problem, is they're not actually therapists.
yet they're given the keys to your soul and your trauma.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was, with mine, there was like a lot of trust. They tell me to trust the process and trust them and believe them, because the 2S LGBTIQ community is lying to us, and everybody else is lying, but they're not lying to themselves, and they're not lying to others, and they're not profiting off of people's pain. They're not doing that, apparently, allegedly.
Yeah, all the cults say that.
I mean, I definitely think it's a cult. I think the fact that the further you get into it, you get opportunities to like make money and speak. And I honestly think that, people like Julie Rogers, that's probably pretty appealing when your family's telling you you're not going to amount to anything if you can't get rid of these like gay feelings and you've already like put yourself out there so much. And I definitely think Ricky Shalette has a huge or should be held responsible for a lot of it, because I don't think people like Julie Rogers would have been put in situations like that. I don't think some of the current people that are in some of his organizations, that I've spoken to some of the kids and teens and young adults that are in some of his current youth groups. And, it really hurts my heart to hear them really questioning themselves, especially because, you think when someone comes to you with something, anything as simple or as complex as an issue can be, you really rely on your own self and being able to think cognitively and make decisions. And here these people are making you question whether or not you can trust yourself. And, that's really hard to see other people fight with. And to offer help and to be pushed away because they're so in the thralls of it. And, Matt and I have tried to help several people get out of it. And, it's hard to watch them dip back in over and over again. But that's part of the allure, and that's also part of why I think it's a cult, is they always have their hands out ready to take you back.
And they all work together. They are the most organized.
It's very much a network.
They're the most organized people that work all together to make sure that this happens throughout the entire planet. They really ruined a lot of people's lives.
As I said in the beginning of the show, we are all trying to accept ourselves, and I'm old now, and I'm still learning to accept myself because I was told that, again, I'm not a demure Proverbs 31 woman. But to see the trauma that is caused by by telling you to not accept yourself, to not trust yourself, to not, all because of their own theories, it's just so destructive. Lifelong issues are caused by this. What can we tell the people who are in there right now, who are being told by their loved ones that this is the way to go, who are at the 2 a.m. and thinking, I can't do this anymore? What line can you throw them to keep them holding on?
The independent expert of the sexual orientation, gender identity change efforts of the United Nations, Victor Megaro-Borlos, stated that conversion therapy, in essence, is torture. This is at a United Nations level. So if we're at a United Nations level speaking about conversion therapy in its essence, in the core essence, to say that there's something fundamentally that is wrong with you, that you need to change yourself to be in a heteronormative society, something is wrong with that system. It is with us, with postmodern thinkers and postmodern believers, that we fight the system and we make sure that we say that we exist, we belong, and we're not going away. You tried to erase us before, you're not going to erase us now.
Well, and I've done a lot of shows on LGBTQs, but I just want to throw this out there again in case someone is watching for the first time. Homosexuality is completely natural. It is seen throughout the animal kingdom. The references that are biblical are misunderstood, and we're actually referring to the cult of Moloch, not homosexuality. It does not, in the Bible, it does not apply to women. It only applies to men and the sexual act, not relationships, not same love. So all of this hatred, all of this need to convert is all based on ignorance. It's all based on misinformation, bigotry, fear, all of the things that are not supposed to be equated with any type of religion or God. The God of love would not condone something that he created, she created, whatever you want to say. So I just wanted to again throw that out there. If you've been following the show, you know that I say this all the time. But if you're watching for the first time, these are facts. Reach out to me. I would be happy to go deeper into the conversation with you. But conversion therapy, anti-LGBTQ, all of that is frankly bullshit. And it's just getting you to hate your neighbor when you're supposed to love your neighbor.
Exactly. I agree. And I think, my message to anyone that's in it, that's an adult, and even a child too, I think, there's only really one main reason why someone joins conversion therapy, regardless of whether it's their choice or not. And it's like the fear that our society instills in us. And I think it did kind of start with religion, but I think the government, especially in the United States, is also perpetuating a lot of hate as well, and across the world. but I think especially like the kids and the people who are there because they've felt that, you know, they're not going to be accepted in their family or their community or society as a whole. That's not true. I've had to kind of create and cultivate my own family as far as like older generation in a lot of ways, and the family members I'm close to now that are my biological family that are older than me aren't necessarily the same people that I felt as this close to when I was younger, but I'm so grateful for the people that have showed up. And there are people who care about you. There's people who want to see you happy. And if you don't feel you're in a situation where you can speak up for yourself, I guarantee you that there is someone out there willing to listen. I'm sure we can put social medias and stuff up. Matt will answer. Sherry will answer. I will answer. There's a lot of other people out there that will answer. There's local organizations like PFLAG. There's the Trevor Project that can help you get like connected with people around you. You know, I know from my own experience, I felt very alone. But once I started talking to my friends and explaining what was going on, I had people's parents pull me aside and say I could stay at their house whenever I wanted to if I felt like I needed to get away. I had people even offer to take custody of me. So it's one of those things, and that was like my senior year of high school when it was just kind of still overwhelming and something that I, you know, felt like I couldn't be disowned by my family. So I know exactly what it feels like to be in those emotions of feeling like you don't have a choice, especially if you're being forced. But at the end of the day, like, you don't have to be there. And even if you feel like you have to be there right now, you don't have to be there forever. You don't have to listen to these people. They don't know what they're talking about. They're all driven also by fear. And honestly, letting go of that fear and being my authentic self has been the greatest decision of my life. And I'm so grateful that I had the courage to do that. And I encourage anyone and everyone, regardless of your age or how you ended up in conversion therapy, or if you're a survivor that's afraid to tell your story, don't let fear hold you back. There's a huge LGBTQ plus community and network of allies that will love and accept you regardless. So please don't let someone else's opinion of you or the fear of someone else's opinion of you make you feel any less.
I honor your bravery. I mean, just in the last 10 years have I been brave enough to be myself and not wanting to change everything. And again, I don't have the societal pressures that you guys have. So to be this brave, to stand for yourself, that is true power. And I honor that in the both of you. Kudos.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to see this next generation too. I would venture to bet they're even a little bit braver than all of us.
Mhm.
That would be awesome.
I agree.
So my generation can't call you guys lazy or anything like that.
I mean,
Awesome.
y'all can try.
Don't boomer me. I'm not there. I'm just saying.
No, don't set me up. Not you. I was thinking of somebody else that you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, in talking to you, I want to go to these camps and start grabbing these people and bringing them out, saying you are whole, you are loved, you don't need this, just accept yourself. Is that what you guys are doing right now? I mean, other than physically going and ripping people out of these communes.
Well, they still operate. So if anybody wants to do the protest,
there is protests, at every single one of the events. In fact, that's how I realized I was going to my very first event, was because my parents lied to me and told me we were going to spend quality time together. I got to pick the restaurant, and then they had a surprise for me after, and it was Love One Out, and we were pulling up. And I was looking out the window, and there were all these people with posters that said, like, you are loved, like, God loves you, we love you, like, and it was just really confusing because I was like, what are they talking about? I had no idea what I was going to until we pulled up. So it does make a difference to go and protest. With the pandemic going on, I don't think there probably has been as much protesting, but those are probably getting a little bit more going. There are easy ways, just Google, honestly, to find out if there's any events going on near you. Like Matt said, There's a lot of different states that have events going on in the near future. Even with just that one organization he talked about. I know that if you're in the Colorado area, there's protests all the time at Focus on the Family, which is in Colorado Springs. But I would say also too, showing up and speaking up if you feel comfortable and if you are there at that point in your journey. Local government, state government. I worked with One Colorado and lobbied a couple months ago here on the state level. We had some bills going through for education with medical professionals, including therapists, on LGBTQ plus issues, including conversion therapy, and including the fact that like they were adding extra education in for LGBTQ plus members of the community that are people of color, and trying to get them up to par, since here in the United States, people of color don't have the same access to healthcare, even though they should. So the fact that that was going on, I got out of my house and did some lobbying. But I think, there's so many different ways, and all of those help. Even if it seems like small, all of it helps.
This country, I feel like I should have a whiteboard of protest just to wipe off today's thing and write something else new.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on something Syre said, or I was alluding to. Um, if there is a situation where somebody is in conversion therapy now, and like let's say they were like under 18, and let's say that they don't really have any of the supports, what happens to them?
Yeah.
What happens to them? What happens to those youth that are on the street because their parents were sending them to something that is so horrific because they were either lied to, or they were told that they had to be like pray a little harder, or to be a little tougher, or to do all these things. We need to have supports. Survivor supports are so fundamental, and honestly, it's very underrated.
It's lacking.
There's somewhere that is called actually in the Los Angeles area. It's called Conversion Therapy Dropout Network. They're doing a fundraiser to do a hotline where somebody can get connected with their hotline. There's a lot of things that we need to do, but we also need to be sure that we are loved and protected, because we deserve protection.
And I think it's worth mentioning out loud, the suicide rate of people who attend conversion therapy is through the roof. I mean, I know for the LGB plus community, not including trans people, it's like 4 times that of the average LGBTQ plus person. And for trans individuals, it's estimated
61%.
it's in the 70s.
Oh, so it is. Okay.
It's one of those things that the fact that there's not support, especially since a lot of people are being pressured or forced to go by family, or the schools. I've heard of people's private schools here in the United States forcing them to go as well. They don't feel like they have a network afterwards for support. And like Matt said, where does that leave you? So I definitely also want to let anyone know that who's out there that might be a survivor or is currently going through it. You are worth being here. Life is worth, spending time healing. It may seem really hard right now, but trust me, healing is worth it. And, there are options for support, but like Matt said, we definitely need more options that are specific. And I can talk specifically to the fact that I've had issues with keeping and finding therapists that they themselves felt adequately able to deal with the trauma of conversion therapy, because part of my trauma was done by a licensed therapist. And so it's one of those things where it's like, even if we do have access to therapy via, say, like my instance, my health insurance, that doesn't necessarily mean we have access to a therapist that's capable of treating, the PTSD that we have, the depression, the anxiety. It's something that, really also too is understudied as far as like the medical and the, educational system. And so I'd also encourage more like doctors and colleges, universities, to talk to conversion therapy survivors, because I think, we're definitely a pocket of the LGBTQ plus community that's underserved, but also too can really enlighten the community as far as like, what happens when things aren't, when things are taken too far, or also when people aren't supported just in general. It can save a lot of lives.
There's a user that said mom repair advocates can help as well. So that's a very good point that was listed to the commenter. So thank you so much for that. I think what the United States needs to do is put funding into, so like I can tell you what Canada did. So we went to all the hookup apps and we said, hey, take 15 to 20 minutes to do this survey. There'd be a $500 gift card that is attached to it, but you have to complete these questions. So they give you questions on race, they give you questions on gender, they give you questions on your upbringing, they give you questions on your depression, they get questions on what type of experience of conversion therapy that you have done. And it goes into a data bank and census, and we have like data for certain select populations that have experienced conversion therapy, what they look like. And that's really important because that's not really talked about with the United States data. Mm-hmm. And I think the US data can do a lot better.
Therapists are just like every other profession. There's good ones and there's bad ones. Correct. I have been working with a therapist for the last couple months, and we have finally gotten to the religious trauma part, the real serious shit. And she was at least evolved enough to say, it's beyond my realm of expertise. I am not someone that can help you with this. That's a good therapist in and of itself to be able to admit that.
Yeah.
But everybody needs to find a therapist that has a specialty into what that trauma is. If not, it can cause more trauma.
Yeah.
And I think too, that's, one of the reasons why, one of the other things I think needs to be added to all of, the outcome of, where we should be, is funding for, resources for therapists to learn more, whether it be, talking with conversion therapy survivors, or whether it be finding, are there therapists that have worked with conversion therapy survivors and have found techniques that work? Can we get them in a setting where they can be teaching other therapists? So it's one of those things where I think, the more research that's done into our community too, the more that can be taught to the general community at, universities where therapists are coming out in like the dozens. So it's also, I think, I'm not complaining about those therapists. I'm glad that they, were able to tell me that they, weren't adequately able to support me in the ways that they should.
Yeah.
But I definitely also think too, it has highlighted that there's a lot of areas that also that group of individuals, as far as medical professionals, can kind of step up to help our community. And I think the LGBTQ plus community as a whole has experienced some trauma. Towards whether it's religious trauma, whether it's family trauma, whether it's someone in the community, someone at school, someone, in society treating them less than because of their, gender identity or sexual orientation. I think, all therapists should have the resources to be able to help patients that might fall into those categories.
In short,
real quick, I put Anna's comment back up here just because I want you all to know in the audience that Mama Bears is there. We did a show with them a couple weeks ago. That is a great source of support. So reach out. I just wanted to make sure that was up there again. Thanks, Anna, for doing so. That is a great organization to go to for support in so many ways.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
Well, hi, Anna. How are you? Yeah, we are underfunded. We are overlooked, and we have something to say. And there was no protections in place for a very long time, and there's little to no survivor supports. Even though that there's bans that are happening, love you. Even though there's bans that are happening, what can we do now, and what can we do to protect survivors?
Exactly.
That's the most important.
Well, I think you guys have given some good tools and hopefully some good resources for anybody that's out there, as well as the information needed to know what a scam this is. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not subject them to the wolves who are telling them to not be themselves.
Thank
Well,
you.
we are already at the top of the hour. I can't even believe how quick this flew. We have at least 5 more minutes, but Matt, any final words, any words of wisdom, and where can everybody find you to reach out?
So, first of all, thank you so much for hosting this. This is
Thank
a
you for
really
coming.
nice. Yes, this is a really nice chat. I'm really grateful that I get to do this work. I love doing this work. I love meeting people, and I love having conversations with survivors. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, MattAsh89. So Mike Alpha Tango Tango Alpha Sierra Hotel 89. Conversion movie is coming out soon as well. So take a look at that. You can follow Conversion movie on Instagram. We are doing our best to make sure that our voices are heard and our voices are amplified. Thank you so much, Syre, for joining me with this. You're forever going to be my boy, man. You're the best. And we are doing this together, and we're in it for the long haul. Nobody's going to stop us.
Heck yeah.
Well, I am so honored to have you both on, and the bravery you both espouse is just phenomenal. You are my heroes. Syre, where can people find you, and what are your final words?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Syre Set Fire. That's SYRESETFIRE. And honestly, I just want to encourage everyone to be their authentic selves, regardless of, any fears you might have of what other people think or what other people might say. That just shows their own insecurities. It's not about you, it's about them. Just be yourself. I think, for me, that was the biggest lesson to help me get over, my own fears that kind of kept me trapped in people pleasing, my own parents. And I think, at the end of the day, that kept me trapped. So anyone that feels trapped right now, there's other opportunities, to get out of those situations. Even though, like Matt said, we need more, there are options out there. So please don't give up. You can do it. Matt and I did it. A lot of survivors have gotten out of their situations. So definitely believe in yourselves and push through.
And I'm going to get to walk the red carpet with Matt in LA when he gets here for the I'm psyched about that.
Yeah.
We started the show with this. So I appreciate you guys more than you know. Thank you so very much. I want to give you one more. We still have a little bit of time. Anything else that you want to say that went unsaid?
Rich Weiler, you got caught this year. You're probably going to get caught again. So stay tuned.
There you go.
Rich Weiler is my conversion therapist. He got caught on CPC Marketplace for doing conversion therapy on a CPC producer. So, wow. Rich Weiler, you better watch out.
Karma.
Karma.
And Anna has some final words too. Know that you are loved and be loved.
Yes, Anna, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Anna's my producer now. She's a rock star too. So, okay, guys. Well, I'm going to send you backstage and close the show. And again, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your passion and your bravery. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Oh, what a fabulous show. Again, heavy. I don't shy away from tough topics. And this was definitely example of that. So definitely take notice and take heart and reach out to Matt and Syre and send them your love and support because they need you. I want to thank so much our panel and for all of their vulnerability. If you like the show, share it with your friends, spread the word. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. And I will see you next week. Next week's show is on joy. We're going to talk about how to elicit joy. As always, you know the most important part is to walk in love, and be sure to do that. See you next week. Bye-bye.